Chapter 9. David once again had his arms wrapped around Susie, and her face was buried in his chest. How awful. She had seen her dog, her Daisy, swept away down the river to certain death. David had his face down by her ear. Of course, there was no way I could hear, but I knew he must be saying things to try and comfort her. I climbed up, first to the antenna and then to the roof. I swung my leg over the peak and then dragged myself forward until I was sitting behind Susie. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. "Quit crying," David yelled. "Stop being such a big baby." I was shocked. He wasn't comforting her. He was telling her off. There's nothing to cry about. The dog has 4 legs, so she can swim twice as good as anybody else. I thought about the dead cows and sheep I had seen, drowned, from being pushed around in the current. He was wrong. 4 legs hadn't helped any of them. Daisy was as good as dead. "She hates the water," Susie sobbed. "That'll make her swim harder to get to shore. Stop blubbering like a baby." "David, she's scared and worried. And you shut up too," he barked. "The dog is fine, understand?" He shot me a look, not angry, but pleading, and instantly I understood what he was doing. As long as he was angry and difficult, it meant that the dog was fine. He wasn't going to admit that there was anything worth crying about because the dog was fine. "She's a Springer Spaniel," I said to Susie. "Even if she hates the water, she can swim really well. All Springer Spaniels can swim just fine." "More than fine. Daisy can swim like a duck," David declared. "Have either of you ever heard of a duck drowning?" He had a point there. I almost believed him. I wanted to believe him. Right about now, that stupid dog is dragging herself out of the water, mad as she can be because she had to get wet. She's going to shake herself off and then go find something to eat and a place to lie down and go to sleep. I could actually picture that whole scene in my mind. "But how will we find her again?" Susie demanded. "The same way we found her when she got out of the yard last year," David said. "Somebody will turn her to the pound, and we'll go down there and get her. Or they'll even call us. She still has her collar and dog tags on." It was the belt that broke, not the collar. He was still holding on to the broken end of the belt, and it held it up to make his point. "Enough about the stupid dog, okay?" he asked. Susie wiped her wet eyes with the wet sleeve of her sweater just as a beam of light swept from the hill and across the water right by where we sat. We all froze. It crossed over us for a split second, and the light practically blinded me. "Maybe they saw us," David said excitedly. "Do you think they saw us?" "If they had seen, they would have kept the light shining on us instead of sweeping it away." David nodded. He knew I was right. I felt bad taking away the glimmer of hope. "They're aiming the light on the river. Why not at the houses?" he asked. "Maybe they don't expect there to be anybody here anymore. But there are. More than just us." I pointed to the house not far from ours. With everything happening, I'd forgotten about the people in the adjacent house. I looked hard. For a few fleeting seconds, I couldn't see them and feared they'd fallen off and been swept away too. Then I saw a dark outline. They were hard to see. They looked more like a chimney than people. They were people, weren't they? I strained my eyes, trying to see through the darkness, through the rain. Even the sound of the river seemed to make it harder to see, looking for any movement. I kept one arm around Susie and waved the other above my head. They waved back. "Do you see them?" "I see them. That house belongs to the Van Dyke family," David said. Susie started waving wildly and yelling out, "Hello!" There was no way they could have heard her over the roar of the river. "How many of them are up there?" David asked. "I think 3. But there are 5 in the family. 3 kids and the parents. Maybe a couple of them weren't home. Maybe it's the 3 kids just like us," David said. I hoped not. Somehow, I wanted there to be an adult there with them, just like I wished there was an adult with us, and I didn't have to be the one to make the decisions. So far, none of those decisions had killed us, but none had saved us either. David was right. If we had just left in the beginning, we'd all have been fine right now. "Here comes the beam again," David said. The beam slowed down and changed directions repeatedly as different things were caught in the light. The river was filled with objects that had been picked up along the valley. We could see only the larger ones, tree branches, even tree trunks, garbage cans, and then, eerily, what looked like a whole barnyard full of pigs came into the spotlight. The light followed them as they popped up, twirled around, bounced and bobbed along. It was as if they were in a race to see which could go fastest, which could get down the river first. I almost expected to see the big bad wolf following behind them, but in an odd way, I was seeing the wolf, the river, that had killed and devoured them. They rushed past the house right down Raymore Drive, and for a brief second, I thought the light might jump over and see us, but it never left the pigs. The light followed them as they raced down the river. They almost seemed alive, but of course they weren't. They couldn't be. I just hoped Susie wouldn't think about them and then about Daisy. "Did you see that?" David said. "Of course, they practically bumped into the house." "No, not the pigs. The Van Dyke house." "No, forget it. It's nothing. My eyes are just playing tricks on me. I'm so tired," David said. "We're all tired. What do you think you saw?" "That house, the Van Dyke house. I thought it moved." I jerked my head toward the house. It was still and standing and not moving. The three people were still silhouetted on the roof. "There it goes again," David yelled. "It's just an illusion. It's not really moving. It's just the way the water is swirling around," I explained. "I always think the footbridge is moving when I look down through the chinks at the river." "I saw it too," Susie said. "No, you probably just thought you saw it because David is talking about it. It's a house. It's solid. It won't move." It couldn't move. Houses didn't move. "The river picked up cars," David said. "A car is one thing. A house is another. And trees. Yeah, but still, a house is so much bigger and..." Then I saw it move. Or thought I did. I blinked hard a few times and rubbed my eyes. A house couldn't move. Could it? "There it goes again," David yelled. "I saw it," Susie agreed. "It twisted." I gasped in horror. Cold, clammy terror filled my whole body. The house was spinning ever so slightly. It looked as though 3 of the corners had come loose, but the 4th was still holding it in place, and it was being turned, ever so slowly, on that one point. The side of the house slowly turned away from me until I began to see the front of it. Then I stopped thinking about the house and remembered the people sitting on top of it. There were 3 of them, but from this angle I could see them only as one black mass. Then the spotlight came across the water and stopped right on the house, right on the people on the house. Under the bright, glaring light, I could see them as clear as day. They were waving their hands in the air, frantically trying to signal the people on the other end of the spotlight. There was a man and 2 children. I knew the children. One was in high school now, but had gone to my school before, and the other still went there, a few grades below me. The girl, the older one, was in a nightgown, the boy just in his pajama pants, and the man was wearing pants but no shirt. I pictured them as having been awoken from their sleep, the way we had been. Where was the mother and the other child? Now that I could see them, I could picture the 2 who were missing. The mother often stood by the fence waiting for the kindergarten kids to be released, picking up her little boy. I'd seen her today. Yesterday. It could have been 1,000 days ago. The boy had been wearing big black rubber boots and a yellow slicker, probably a hand-me-down from his sister, and he would have hated it. I'd seen them cross the footbridge ahead of us, so she must have been there to fix dinner for her family. But what then? Maybe she'd taken the little boy to her sister's house. She must have sisters. Or they'd gone shopping and got caught and couldn't get back into the valley because the rain had already started falling so strongly. Or maybe they had been swept away with the trees and the cars and cows and pigs and Daisy. The house stopped spinning. Somehow it must have settled back down, or no, it wasn't spinning because it was now drifting towards us. The house, the whole house, brightly illuminated under the beam of the spotlight, was being pushed along by the force of the river. What would happen when it hit against our house? Would we stop it, or would it bump us and start us down the river as well? Slowly, as if it were trying to sneak up on us, the house moved our way. First, it would drift a few feet, and then it would stop, then drift a few feet more. When the house came to a stop again, it shuddered, as if it were afraid of what was going to come next. It looked as though it had been snagged or had hit against something, or the Watson house. It had come to rest against the little bungalow, hidden beneath the water. The whole process was brightly lit as the beam of the spotlight shone directly on the house, directly on the 3 people on the roof. They were so close that I could clearly see their expressions, the looks of fear and confusion. The girl looked like she was crying. Why shouldn't she? The only thing that had stopped me from breaking into tears a dozen times was that I knew I needed to look strong and calm in control for Susie. Above the roar of the river, I could hear them yelling, screaming, crying out for help. The whole scene was caught beneath the beam, focused one property over from us. If that beam would only shift, the people on the shore would see us, realize we were here. Even if they couldn't reach us, at least they'd know. At least our parents would know we were alive. "It's moving again," David said. I saw it too, but it wasn't moving towards us. Somehow, it was sliding sideways. There was a scraping sound so loud that I could hear it over the rush of the river. Then I realized what was happening. The current was pushing the house sideways. Because it couldn't go through the Watson bungalow, it was sliding along its side, and when it had been pushed far enough to one side, it would be free to go back to moving downstream. The Van Dyke house began to turn again. The front of the house, the leading edge, was caught in the current, while the tailing section was still sitting against the Watson house. Slowly, it began to spin. Still spinning, the house moved right alongside us. The three figures, father and two children, were frozen in the glare of the spotlight. They were so close that I felt I could reach out and touch them. So close that I could talk to them. But even if my words could have been heard above the roar of the river, what would I have said to them? "Hello? I'm sorry. I wish I could help. Goodbye." Goodbye. The house gained speed. It started to buck and rock and bounce as it flowed faster and faster. The three figures were still caught in the glare of the spotlight, the white nightgown of the girl practically glowing. The beam of light was like a long, white leash, pulling the house forward but also keeping it safe, stopping it from running away, so that they could just pull it to shore. And then, despite the roar of the river, despite the growing distance between us and them, just before the house disappeared around a bend in the river, I thought I heard a scream.